I used to think silence meant peace. In our house, it meant hierarchy. My name is Claire Mercer, and I was the child no one remembered to call for dinner. I wasn't the loud one, or the charming one, or the athletic one. I was the, oh, right, you're here too. One, the extra chair, the unused birthday candle, the footnote in a family photo. My father Thomas didn't believe in shouting. He believed in eye contact, who got it and who didn't. He could make my brothers feel like senators with a nod and reduce me to a ghost with a glance right past my shoulder. His love wasn't conditional, it was exclusive. Reserved for sons. I remember one Father's Day when I was 12. I had spent the whole weekend crafting a card out of scrapbook paper and glitter glue, writing him a poem I had edited 10 times. I slipped it under his coffee mug that morning, heart racing like I had submitted my soul for approval. He looked at it for less than 2 seconds. "Thanks," he muttered, eyes never leaving the sports page. 5 minutes later, my brother Brandon, 4 years older already walking like a CEO in gym shorts, breezed in and tossed a gas station mug onto the table. "One, Dad," it said in crooked font. My father beamed. Now that's what I'm talking about. I still had glitter on my fingers. Brandon was the idea guy. He once pitched a lawn mowing app at dinner when he was 16. My dad spent the next hour brainstorming names for it with him. Drew, the youngest, was the golden retriever in human form, always smiling, always scoring points, always getting tackled and standing right back up. Dad never missed a game. He never came to any of my art shows. Not one. It wasn't that I was unloved. It was that I was unnoticed. There's a difference. One breaks your heart loudly. The other makes you question whether you even have a heart worth breaking. At dinner, he'd lean forward, eyes bright. "Brandon, how'd the pitch go? Drew, coach say anything after the game?" Then he'd sit back and chew while I passed the salad. If I spoke, it was an interruption. If I stayed quiet, it was confirmation. My mother, Ellen, tried now and then. "You're special too, sweetheart," she'd whisper while folding laundry like it was a secret too fragile for the kitchen table. But even she obeyed the gravity in that house. Everything orbiting the Mercer men. I remember once asking for a new sketchbook from the art store downtown. It cost $38.95. My father didn't even look up from his tablet. "What's the point?" he said. "You'll quit halfway like everything else." That sentence stayed with me longer than most of my friendships. I got the sketchbook anyway. I saved up for weeks, walking dogs after school, skipping lunch to squirrel away the money. When I brought it home, he glanced at it once and said, "Hope you actually use it this time." I did. Every page, every night, quietly. By the time I turned 16, I stopped hoping for his attention. I still worked harder. Even I joined the honors program, took AP classes, and started a part-time job at the library. Not because I thought he'd notice. I just needed to know I could do things without him. Still, a part of me hoped. Just a little. When I got accepted into the State Honors Institute, I waited for the right time to tell him. It was a Saturday morning. He was sipping coffee on the back porch. Brandon had just left after borrowing the car. Drew was still asleep. I stepped outside, holding the letter in my hand. "I got in," I said. He looked up confused. "Got in," where I handed him the envelope. He read the first line, gave a small nod, then handed it back. "That's nice," he said, then added, "You'll have to figure out transportation, though. I'm not driving across town every day." That was it. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. Just a scheduling concern. The next weekend, Drew made the varsity soccer team. My dad invited the neighbors for barbecue. He ordered a cake. He grilled steaks. He even gave a speech. That boy doesn't back down from anything he said, raising a beer in Drew's direction. Real backbone. I brought out the paper plates. Later that night, I stood at the kitchen sink scrubbing grease from the pans. My mother walked in, drying her hands on a towel. "You did a good job with the food," she said quietly. I wanted to ask her something, anything. Why doesn't he see me? Why don't you say something? But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Thanks," and kept scrubbing. Things continued that way. Brandon started his first business during college, some online store that lasted maybe 6 months. Still, my dad bragged about it to everyone. "That's initiative," he'd say. "That's a leader." Meanwhile, I started a digital design internship, paid competitive. I mentioned it at dinner once. My dad didn't even look up. "Brandon," he said, "tell them about that new app idea you were working on." I stopped talking. I started saving. Not just money, but energy time. Pride. I stopped expecting approval and started building my own center of gravity somewhere outside that house. I picked up extra work from local businesses, designed flyers, managed their websites, taught myself to code after school using library books and YouTube videos. One night, while Drew and Brandon were out celebrating something, I was at my desk in the basement, eyes blurry, fixing bugs in a prototype I was building. My mother opened the door, leaned in. "Still working?" I nodded. She hesitated, then said, "Your brothers are lucky. Things come easy for them." Then she left. She thought it was comfort. It wasn't. I wanted her to say I was strong. Not just unlucky, but like always, she offered sympathy in place of support. By the time I graduated high school, I had a portfolio, a small savings account, and 3 local clients. I also had a plan. Not a big one, just enough to get out. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was trying to disappear without leaving a hole. I moved out the week after my 19th birthday. There was no big announcement, no goodbye dinner, no packed minivan in the driveway. I told them I'd be staying closer to campus to focus on work. My dad nodded like I'd said I was buying more toothpaste. My mom asked if I'd still come home on weekends. I told her I'd see what I could do. What I didn't say was that I'd signed a 6-month lease for a studio apartment across town under a new name, Claire Whitaker. The name change had been legal for almost a year by then. It wasn't about hiding, it was about starting clean. The old name came with too many rules I hadn't written. The apartment was small, the kind of small where you could sit on the bed and reach the fridge without standing, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand desk, a cheap coffee maker, and a folding chair from a yard sale. My office, my kitchen, my bedroom, all within 6 feet of each other. It was quiet in a different way than home had been. Less hollow, more free. Most nights I worked. Not because I had to, though. Money was tight, but because I wanted to. I was building something. A platform that helped small businesses track their digital sales more clearly. Nothing fancy, but it worked. And people noticed. I started taking freelance contracts through word of mouth. Designed better checkout flows, wrote custom code for mom-and-pop shops, answered emails at 1 a.m. because no one else would. Slowly it grew. I didn't have investors or mentors or family asking about my progress. I had long hours, burnt coffee, and stubborn focus. There were nights I wanted to quit, nights where a bug in my code made everything crash and I had to start from scratch, times when I was down to my last $20 and still said no to quick-pay design gigs that didn't align with my vision. I ate a lot of toast. I ignored a lot of birthdays. I didn't send holiday cards. I didn't go back for Thanksgiving. When my family texted, I replied with one-line answers. I wasn't angry. Just elsewhere. Occasionally, I saw them on social media. Photos of my brothers at conferences. Golf outings, baby showers. Brandon in a suit giving a speech to some startup group, Drew, holding his firstborn. My dad beside him, beaming like he'd just won something. I watched them live in the center of a story I had exited years ago. And then quietly, the shift happened. One of my longest clients, a small online craft supply store, referred me to a regional distributor. That distributor referred me to a retail tech investor. The investor liked my product. He liked that I'd built it alone, that I hadn't taken outside funding, that I knew what I wanted. 6 months later, we signed a seed deal. Not a massive one, but enough to move out of my studio and into a tiny office space with real windows and chairs that didn't fold. I hired 2 people. One was a self-taught developer who reminded me of me 5 years earlier. The other was a former project manager who'd been laid off after maternity leave. We worked well together, quietly, efficiently. We didn't print press releases. We didn't throw launch parties. We just kept building. One afternoon during a meeting, I got a call from the investor. "I've got something for you," he said. "Anderson Systems is looking shaky. We're in talks to acquire. You're already integrated with half their clients. Think about it." Anderson Systems. That was the company where my dad had worked for the last 10 years. The one he talked about like it was his second home. The one he wore a branded polo shirt for at every barbecue. I didn't say yes right away. I waited a full week. Then I called back. Voice steady. "I'll do it, but make it silent. I want the board to approve it before my name comes up." He chuckled. "Claire, Whitaker always playing it cool." I wasn't playing anything. I just wasn't done. Building. 2 years passed before I saw them again. No calls, no visits, no questions. I don't think they noticed I was gone. Not really. That's the thing about being invisible. After a while, your absence blends in with your presence. No one marks the difference. Then, one afternoon in May, a message popped up in the old family group chat. Father's Day, BBQ 4 p.m., same place. Let us know if you're coming. Drew had sent it. Brandon replied with thumbs up emojis. My mother hearted it. No one mentioned me. I didn't overthink it. I typed a simple, I'll be there. No one responded. No follow-up, no questions, just silence. Familiar, almost comforting. I spent the next week working as usual. We had just closed the Anderson deal. The legal paperwork had cleared. The press hadn't heard yet. That had been the condition. My name would appear on the executive register the Monday after Father's Day. On Saturday night, I picked up the car. It was a lease technically, but it looked like something off a tech CEO's dream board. Black sleek, almost silent when you drove it. I wasn't trying to make a point. I just wanted to arrive, like someone they wouldn't expect. In the passenger seat sat a small black envelope. Heavy paper. Gold-trimmed edges inside a single legal document with my name across the top. My real name, not Mercer. The morning of the barbecue, I dressed simply. Navy slacks, cream blouse, flat shoes, no jewelry, no lipstick, just clean, quiet confidence. I arrived at 4:07. The Mercer house looked exactly the same. Fresh mulch flag in the yard. Folding chairs in the driveway. My dad stood at the grill, laughing beer in hand. Brandon was showing someone pictures on his phone. Drew was tossing a football with two kids I didn't recognize. When I stepped out of the car, heads turned. For a moment, the air seemed to shift, not cold, not warm, just uncertain. My dad noticed me last. He did a double take, then smiled. Well, he said, flipping a burger. Look who finally decided to show up. I smiled politely. Happy Father's Day. My mother came out of the kitchen with a tray of glasses. Her expression was unreadable. We didn't hug. Inside the dining room looked like a Norman Rockwell painting. Long table, white tablecloth, iced tea, sweating in pitchers, bowls of corn and coleslaw. Everyone took their seat like it was rehearsal for a play they'd done 100 times. I sat near the end, not next to anyone in particular. Not expected, not unwelcome. Just present. Brandon started talking first. Something about a funding round, new investors market traction. My father nodded like a proud manager at a performance review. Drew added a story about hitting his quarterly bonus and winning some kind of team award. I said nothing. No one asked. The meal went on. Eventually, someone raised a toast. I think it was Drew, to Dad, the backbone of the family. You taught us how to lead. Everyone murmured approval. My father stood holding his glass. I couldn't be prouder of my boys, he said, pausing to let it land. Real men, they don't quit. They don't ask for favors. They build. That's what this world needs. He looked around at the table and Claire. He added with a shrug and a smirk. Still out there trying to figure it out, I guess. A few chuckles. Nothing cruel, just casual dismissal. The kind that cuts cleaner than rage. I placed my fork down. I actually brought you something, Dad, I said, reaching into my bag. The room quieted. Forks paused. Glasses stopped mid-air. Just a small Father's Day gift? I stood and walked outside. The backyard was quiet except for the wind moving through the trees. I walked to the car, opened the passenger door, and picked up the envelope. Its weight hadn't changed, but something in me had. Not heavier, just stiller. Inside, the dinner conversation carried on in low hums, forks clinking against plates, ice rattling in glasses. When I stepped back through the doorway, the sound dimmed, or maybe I just stopped listening. I returned to the table, walked to where my father sat at the head. I placed the envelope in front of him gently. Not like a gift, more like a file being submitted for you, I said. He looked at it with mild amusement like it might be a card or a joke coupon. What's this? He asked. Read it carefully. He tore open the flap, unfolded the paper. For a moment, his face didn't move. Then his brow tightened. His eyes tracked the lines slowly, then faster. The corner of his mouth dropped. He looked again as if rereading might rewrite what he'd seen. His hand twitched. The paper made a soft, crinkling sound. Brandon leaned in. What is it? Drew stood up slightly. Is that what is that, Dad? My father didn't answer right away. He looked up at me, for once really looked. This isn't real, he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was empty. It is, I said calmly. The acquisition finalized last week. The name you didn't recognize on the board memo that was mine. Brandon's voice broke the silence. Wait, Claire, are you saying you bought Anderson? I didn't correct the name. Not yet. I didn't buy it alone, I said, but I own the majority stake. And the board just approved a new operating structure. My father's lips moved, but no words came out. He glanced back at the paper, then at me again. You work for me now, I said softly. Drew sat down hard. Brandon scoffed. You've got to be kidding. That company's been around since before you were in diapers. I looked at him. That's true. And yet here we are. No raised voice. No fireworks. Just the sound of a door unlatching somewhere deep in their understanding of me. My mother, still holding a serving spoon, hadn't moved. She cleared her throat. Claire, was this necessary? I turned toward her. No, it wasn't necessary. It was just overdue. I looked back at my father. I used to think I had to do something amazing to earn your respect, that maybe if I built something big enough you'd finally see me. Turns out, I only had to buy the thing you already cared about. He didn't respond. Brandon reached for the paper. My father didn't stop him. His eyes were still on me, or maybe on the space where I used to sit at the edge of every table waiting to be asked something. Anything? I gave him a faint smile. I'm not looking for approval, I said. I brought this so you'd finally stop pretending. I turned, picked up my bag, and walked to the door. No one followed. No one called out. As I stepped outside, I glanced toward the driveway. The car gleamed under the porch lights, still black, expensive in ways they'd never asked about. Not loud, just undeniable. I got in and closed the door. The engine started with a quiet hum. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't check the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. From inside the house, I heard something break, maybe a glass, maybe a silence. Either way, it wasn't mine to fix. The drive home was quiet, not the hollow kind I used to know, not the silence of being ignored or forgotten. This was different, solid, earned, like the end of a long, slow exhale. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel regret. I felt finished. Back at my apartment, I hung up my coat, placed the envelope copy in a locked drawer, and poured myself a glass of water. No champagne, no music. Just stillness. My inbox had a few unread messages. One from a client, one from an investor, and one from my mother. Subject: Was that really necessary, Claire? No greeting, no sign-off. Just the kind of question that came too late. I didn't reply. I read it once, then clicked print and slid the page into a folder in my filing cabinet labeled Legacy. The next morning, I walked past the mirror in the hallway. For years, I had avoided it. Not out of vanity, but because every glance felt like a reminder of who I wasn't supposed to be. But now I paused. The woman in the reflection stood straight, calm, and whole. She didn't look angry. She didn't look victorious. She looked real, like someone who had built a life from scraps and silence. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. I spent that Sunday doing laundry, vacuuming, reading an old book I hadn't finished in years. I watered the plant in the windowsill. Somewhere along the way, I noticed I was smiling, not wide. Just enough I knew what was probably happening back at the Mercer house. Raised voices. A paper being passed back and forth. My brothers asking questions no one had answers to. My father sitting in that same chair staring at a reality he could no longer rewrite. He wouldn't be fired, not yet. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want to destroy his life. I just wanted him to know that mine had never needed his permission to exist. That night, I opened a new notebook, clean pages, no lines. I wrote 2 words at the top of the first page. I'm here, not loud. Not in all caps, just clear. They'll talk. I'm sure Brandon will say I planned it for years. Drew will say I've changed. My mother will wonder where she went wrong, and maybe someday they'll realize that I didn't come back to impress them. I didn't come back to win anything. I came back so they'd finally stop pretending I was never there. I don't know if they'll ever say sorry. I don't need them to. Some truths don't require acknowledgement. They just need to be said once, out loud, then left behind.